functional movement, that's kind of what I preach and practice personally, and with my clients as well. So what's functional movement? Essentially, well, let's take a step back. I think just movement in general is good for whether you have diabetes, you have no disease, you have some other disease. Everyone, just for healthy aging, needs to keep active and keep moving. At the very least, walking. You lubricate the joints. Get synovial fluid, et cetera, just moving and everything in the morning on throughout the day, right? And I think we all know, we've all heard this, sitting is the new smoking, et cetera. So just moving around a lot is, I think, just important. So what does, how can people do these movements? So people have their own things they like to do: running, cycling, kayaking, whatever it may be. And that's all great. I think part of movement is functional strength training as well, especially for aging. Keep lean muscle mass so we don't, or people don't develop sarcopenia, or the loss of muscle mass as we age. So to me, functional movement is very, and I kind of, I guess I'll say, I kind of steal this from Mark Sisson in the Primal Health movement. Essentially, there's just really five, in my opinion, five functional exercises that the average Joe, the average Jill that isn't prepping for some event, that's all they really need to do for healthy aging. So before I get into that, I'll just kind of maybe talk about how I approach someone that I work with, as far as how I assess them before I even come up with a plan. So the very first thing I do, and again, this is just for clients that have personal training or a fitness component to their program. So the very first thing, after obviously some intake, and if they have any injuries and their health history, et cetera, what they like doing, activity preferences, et cetera, I basically just have them, stand sort of straight, relaxed, and do a postural assessment. So, things like their head tilt, shoulder height, their arms internally rotated, which most people are because of this age of working on computers and texting, et cetera. Is their pelvis height the same? Can you guys see me okay? Is my camera? It looks like you got a lot above me here. Maybe I should, let me tweak that here. Is that better? Yeah, good, okay. Thanks, Bert. Okay, is their pelvis height the same height? Do they have any leg imbalances, scoliosis, external foot rotation, that sort of thing? And then, so that's the front, and then from the side, they have forward head tilt, they have lordosis or kyphosis, flat back, and then sort of the lumbar curve. Is it sort of normal, or a little bit beyond normal? So that's kind of first step, just to sort of see where posturally, how they're situated. And then I'll do sort of what's dynamic postural assessment. So basically, the next thing would be a seated spinal rotation. So essentially, I have someone sit cross-legged on the floor with their back as straight as possible. I'll try and demonstrate as best I can in my chair. Their arms across, and I'll put a dowel or broomstick or something to that effect, and just see them rotate side to side. And basically, what I'm testing to see is if they have equal movement on either side, or they're limited on one side or another. So that could show muscle imbalance or injury as well. If that hasn't already come up, that they have some injury or past injury, that could show muscle imbalance potentially. The next thing, which I can't really demonstrate sitting in a chair, basically I have clients lie down flat on their back, and then with one leg, I tuck my foot underneath one of their knees, and they apply pressure, so they're pressing down on my foot. And with the other leg, they raise their leg as far as they can, as straight as they can, comfortably with no pain. And then we'll do the other side. I might have them do it a couple times. But basically, I'm trying to check their hip health and their pelvic rotation to see how healthy that is, if there's any issues in mobility there. And then also you can get a sense of the strength or most cases weakness of their hamstrings and glutes as well. And then another thing I will do, not always, if a client has knee problems or Achilles problems or something like that, and they can't really bend, or they're already having trouble walking, I won't do this for them. But the other thing I'll do is have them do basically, again, holding a dowel or nothing, basically doing a squat position with their arms in proper position as if they were doing sort of a weighted bar squat, just to see their range of motion, how far they can bend. That's number one. And then number two, assuming they have some range of motion, then I'll have them hold it for as long as is comfortable for them. And again, there's a bit of a scoring system, which I won't get into the details on that. But the longer they can hold it, the higher they can score. And then the other things too, again, depends, especially if it's a local client that I can see one-on-one, and we're not doing remote Zoom call or what have you. I can do a cardiovascular test on whatever exercise equipment that is relevant or that they may have around. And then other things we can do is a sit and reach test. I don't have a machine that one of those scales, but you can sort of eyeball it a little bit. And then also shoulder flexibility tests. Again, you can see that a bit as well too when they do the overhead squat, and how far, especially if they're holding a dowel or something, how far they can comfortably move their shoulders back, just to see shoulder flexibility. What else do I do? Oh, grip strength. Grip strength, one of those meters, whatever they're called, and just get a baseline, and then we can test over time as well, and just see where they're at for their age and their condition. And again, that's all kind of gives us a scoring system just to see where they're at. Now, once I have done all that, and then I kind of know where they're limited. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. The other thing I can do is I can actually do a push-up test, see how well they score there, either from their toes or from their knees. But some clients aren't even at that point, so can't do that. Or some people aren't at that point. And then also could do some sort of, I don't particularly like sit-ups myself. I prefer planks for core work, but some sort of could be a plank test, or it could be a sit-up test, see how many reps or how long they can hold, et cetera, just to get a gauge of core strength. So that's just all to give me a foundation of where to start with before I come up with some sort of routine for them. So just bear with me 1 second here. Getting over a cold and just drinking my chaga tea here. So once I have that in base, where they need work or where they need strengthening, then again, unless somebody is, and I've certainly worked with people who are runners or what have you, but unless they're training for something specific, their own personal Mount Everest, whatever, be obstacle race, marathon, whatever. I'm not really that guy. I mean, I am a runner, and I have trained sort of beginner runners, but if somebody wants sports specific, that's not really my thing. I work more with people who are maybe haven't worked out in a long time, or are very deconditioned. It's been many years, usually overweight, and with maybe some other health complication. Excuse me. So basically, again, going back to my earlier points, for that type of person who's just starting out and just wants to be healthy and functional strength as they age, again, there's just really 5 basic functional movements that I not only work on myself personally, but that I use with my clients. So number 1 is a pushing motion. So that typically is a push-up. And again, a push-up all it is angles. So I'm not probably telling you guys anything that you don't already know. But for someone who's very deconditioned, I'll start them off on the kitchen counter or a table or something very high, so the angle is great, so it makes it easier for them. And of course proper cueing on where their hand should placement and that sort of thing. And then if that's too easy, then as they accomplish that, then we just bring the angle down till eventually they're doing a regular push-up, or what we consider a regular push-up on the floor from their toes. And that's, for most people, that's as far as they can go. If they can get up to 40 of those, or 3 sets of 30, or as many push-ups, that's their age. I can say actually, it's maybe been a couple months ago now, but I actually was able to barely squeak out my age in push-ups in one round, so that was great. So I'm like, okay, I'm there. But that, as I progress and get older over the years, I don't know if I'll be able to keep that up. It's an endurance thing. But and certainly if somebody gets past that point, and maybe they're a bit on the maybe younger side, maybe deconditioned, and over time get healthier, lose weight, get stronger, etc. Obviously, we can make push-ups harder than just your basic push-up, but I won't get into that. The second is some sort of pulling motion. That could be chin-ups, sort of a wide grip pull down, reverse grip. It could be a row of some sort. For people who just want to work out in their home and don't have sort of any apparatus, they can just do a sort of a bent over row with one hand, braced on a chair or a table or something with some sort of weight. Could be a milk jug filled with water, a water bottle, anything that provides a little bit of resistance, and basically do a row from a bent position. So basically, what I also like to tell clients is, and I'll go back to the pushing motion. So what is a push-up as you age? A push-up or a pushing motion is really helping you get up off the floor if you fall it. Maybe pushing a door open, something to that effect. What's a pulling motion? Grabbing a suitcase out of the back of the trunk, grabbing a book off the shelf, grabbing a box off the top shelf. So all functional things that we need in everyday life. The third functional movement is a squat, as I sort of alluded to with my tests. Again, if somebody can just only has a very slight bend, a very maybe 5 or 10 degrees, that's all they can bend. You know what? That's a squat. That's a squat for them, and we can move on as they progress. They could hold a chair, they could hold a wall for support, etc. So they don't have to do a deep squat. They don't have to add any weight. They don't even have to put their hands up and hold anything. Their hands could just be in front. Again, could be holding a wall to the side. Just anything to build those muscles, your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, to a lesser degree, your calf muscles, and etc. So basically, what is a squat? How does that help you in your future life? A squat is getting out of a chair. A squat is getting off the toilet when you're older. That is quite a concern actually for older clients of mine, for sure, right? Even even my parents who are elderly and have health issues, right? That's something, and weight issues. That's something that to be cognizant of. The fourth one is a lunge. So we all basically know what a lunge is. I won't demonstrate here, but again, start with the simplest, holding a wall. So the simplest would be stagger your feet and then just bend down. So stationary lunge, where you're not stepping forward, you're not stepping back, just a stationary lunge with holding a chair or a wall for support. That'd be the easiest, again, to whatever degree that they can do comfortably with no pain. That's where we start with, and then we can progress till a walking lunge with weight or advanced. When I did my functional movement course, the instructor just blew me away. I thought I was pretty decent, but do a 45-degree angle backwards lunge, keeping your torso straight and staying low to the ground. Yeah, you've never had your quads burned so bad. I've never had my quads burned so bad. So you can always make things harder, and that's not with no weight, right? So you can always make things harder, but for most people, it's starting with the basics that they can do and progressing to sort of a normal, maybe just front lunge or walking lunges, etc. So what is a lunge good for as you age? A lunge is basically walking up the stairs, right? Helping you walk up the stairs, wherever that may be. Even if someone's in their own home, in an apartment or something, the elevator might not always work, or you go to the grocery store or some shop, there's always even 2 or 3 stairs. There's always stairs that to be navigated. So, and again, works, basically every muscle in the lower part of your body. And then the fifth and final, again, is your core work. Now, for someone, some of you know my story, coming from back pain, back issues. I prefer to do everything, and I have a whole routine for I do for my core, but everything's neutral spine. So basically, keeping my spine flat. That's why I like the plank. I think sit-ups, I think is not mechanically not a really good exercise. There's too many ways you can cheat. You can, use your hands to move your head, put a lot of strain on your neck, etc. So I think the plank is the best. So again, with a client, plank is much like the push-up. Start at a high incline on a table or the kitchen counter. Engage the core, hold, proper cueing of hands and shoulders, etc. Hold as long as they can, and then they just bring the angle down to the point they're eventually doing a plank on the floor, on their elbows or something like that as we progress along. So essentially, in a nutshell, that's kind of my version of what functional exercise is for most people who are not training for something, who are not advanced. I don't say, advanced athletes or advanced exercise enthusiasts. Most of my clients are very deconditioned, and they just need a starting point. And so those 5 exercises are very simple, easy to remember, and you don't need to go to the gym. You can do it in a very small space. You can do it in your office at work. You can do it in your bedroom, your living room. Very simple, with no equipment if nobody has equipment. And to be quite honest, again, going a little bit back, if you're not training for something, a hike or whatever, why are you going to the gym? Why are you, unless you like the camaraderie and the social aspect, but really, is that the place for to do that at the gym? I don't think so. But I don't really think there's a need to go to the gym unless you want to hit the cardio machine and you don't have it at home and it's wintertime, you can't go for a run or what have you. It plays its role, but for to do, we probably all of us have been to the gym before. Have probably seen people, with the tricep extension rope, and trying to build all that little definition in the back of your tricep. It's like, you can't even do a push-up. Like, what are you doing here? If you can't even do a push-up, why are you working on isolating single muscles and that sort of thing? It doesn't make any sense. So long story short, I'm not a big believer in the gym or going to a gym. I haven't been to a member of a gym in 20 years probably. I mean, I do have a setup at home. I do have weights at home, and I'll cycle that in once in a while. But essentially, my own personal that I do at home is I do just high intensity. So I'll do squats, push-ups, back, lunges, rest, and do that again 3 or 4 sets, done in 15, 20 minutes. I'm sweating, cardio, my heart's pounding, and then I'll do my core routine where the plank and a bunch of other stuff that I do comes in. I just do that once a week because I'm 42 years old. I'm trying to keep my lean muscle mass, but I'm not trying to bulk up like I used to back in the day. So to me, that's functional fitness in a nutshell. Oh, one test that I forgot to mention is probably some of you are aware of this, or most of you, is a sit to stand test. So basically, you sit cross-legged on your bum on the ground, and then you just try and get up using the least amount of appendages. So if you basically have to, and then again, scoring system. So if you can just sit right up, you score the highest. If you have to use one hand, you get knocked off a couple points. You basically have to get on your hands and knees, so 4 points of contact to sort of push yourself and stand up. Then you'll score low. So again, that's, I guess, another test of just overall health and flexibility and I think it's also, and maybe Bert might have some comment there, just on the biohacking side on a test of your nervous systems and that sort of thing too, if you can do excuse me, that test. And then the other, of course, the component too that I work with, everyone should do in general, but again, certainly I stress with my clients as well, is to teach them proper stretching for those muscle groups, or at least the major muscle groups. So if you're doing push-ups, of course you're working out your shoulders, they are secondary muscle, your triceps, but at the very least they need to stretch out their pec major, their major chest muscle group. So I'll show them a routine, but you need to stretch, proper stretching after doing a workout. So that's something also I incorporate with my clients as well. And and then yeah, you can stretch. And I think stretching. Again, this is just me, but something I sort of promote to friends and family as well is just stretching all the time. Whether it's a couple twists around, touch your toes, stretch out your calves. Even if you have no injury or no past issues like I do. Like I alluded to, I have a very long and strict and regimented stretching routine that I do every day. But I think just for good health, especially spine health, people should do a little bit of stretching, if not daily, at least a couple times a week, just to stay loose and limber. You can't, be the weekend warrior, whether you're a golfer, a runner, or whatever, and stretch for 2 minutes before you do your activity, and then to sort of warm up, and then do a couple more stretches afterwards for 5 minutes and call it a day, and then you have muscle soreness greater than you need it to have. So stretching is very important, and of course. I'm sure everyone's aware of these terms, but dynamic stretching before your activity and static stretching afterwards. So dynamic stretching is when you're sort of moving, you're kind of bouncing, that sort of thing, and static stretching is where you hold a stretch for 20, 30, maybe up towards a minute. So research has shown that static stretching before exercise actually decreases your flexibility and your performance. So static stretching after, dynamic stretching before, dynamic stretching along with your warm-up phase. So I think in a nutshell, that's kind of what functional fitness means to me. Maybe just one other comment. Again, I kind of alluded to Mark Sisson and his sort of primal viewpoint. And again, those same exercises, kind of what he promotes. But if you want to take back to our ancestors, right, there was no gyms. Realistically, there were strong men in the late 1800s, and people lifted weights in the early 1900s. But really, the modern day gym that we see now is, I don't know, a product of like the 1960s, 1970s at best. So, our ancestors or mankind just kept active, and they had to hunt, and they had to run, and they had to pick up things and move logs and that sort of thing. And certainly some people, take that approach today as sort of a primal approach. Or ancestral approach to fitness. I don't take to that extreme myself. I don't mind like climbing things, or if the kids are at the park, I'll do the monkey bars and I'll jump up on stuff and whatever. But that's not my usual. It's just kind of, as I alluded to, those 5 functional exercises in sort of a HIIT routine, a couple times over with a little bit of rest, minute rest in between sets, and 15-20 minutes, I'm done. 15-20 minutes a week. And that's all I really promote to my clients, especially beginners or those who are very deconditioned. If they're a little bit more advanced, or they're maybe starting from a better starting place, then maybe 2 or 3 times a week. But I find with clients, you almost have to taper them and be conservative, because they'll tend to go more than you say anyway. You write out their routine and like, hey, that was great, and I'm just going to do it again tomorrow, and then they end up hurting themselves or whatever. So like, temper it back for them, because they're going to likely advance it on their own anyway, and then adjust as. So that's what functional fitness means to me. That's how I work with how I deal with myself personally, and then how I deal with my clients or people that come to me for consultations or what have you. So kind of spoke kind of fast there, rambled a bunch of stuff off. So please answer any questions, whatever it might be, how I deal with my clients or what I do with myself. And happy to answer any questions in that regard. Opening it up to you. Come on, Bert, I see you smiling there. You must have some comments.
I don't know. Let's see. I'll say, how do you incorporate, or what do you suggest with your clients for food or nutrition? How do you fit that into the program?
So for most of my clients hire me for a full package. And exercise and functional movement is a part of that, a smaller part. I think nutrition is like 80% of the game. So I try and push a high percentage of the gains to come from nutrition. So I know this isn't supposed to be necessarily a nutrition talk, but my philosophy, so I'm the low inflammatory guy. That's what I've coined myself. So And I've developed, I've taken from paleo, I've taken from keto, I've taken from wild diet, this diet, whatever, and bulletproof, et cetera, and sort of come up with, my version, what works for me and what I follow. And that's not what I necessarily prescribe for my clients, but my approach is basically bring inflammation down. A lot of it comes, stress, sleep, could be overtraining, et cetera. A lot of it, I think, also comes from food and our nutrition. So I'm tackling it from all phases, but from the food and nutrition, get rid of inflammatory things. So let's change out your oils. Maybe we need to cut out dairy. Maybe we need to cut out grains, gluten for sure, and play around with it. So my philosophy with clients is not to say, you can't have this. This is all you can eat. My philosophy is like, hey, I noticed, and I have all my clients do like a 2-week food log to start with. So I have a baseline of like, what's their typical week like, where they're, so that encompasses both work life, weekend, maybe travel potentially, all those sort of things that come up, family occasions, et cetera. So I have a baseline that said, hey, I noticed you don't eat a lot of, you only eat like one serving of vegetable like a day is what it looks like to me. Oh yeah, I don't really like vegetables. Like, well, here's the benefits, blah, blah, blah. Can we try to add 1 or 2 extra servings of this? And here's some recipes, or here's some ways to prepare, and cook it in ghee or grass-fed butter or coconut oil, whatever. So I try to get them to comply with adding things. And so, well, if I eat all this broccoli, I can't eat all this pasta. Well, okay, well, cut the pasta. And let them self-select. So if they're going to have, I'm just off the top of my head, they're going to have like a steak and they're going to have a side of pasta, and that's all they would normally have. Or maybe like, and a potato. It's like, well, can we do like a sweet potato, or like, let's try broccoli. So I'm like, okay. And then they're like, well, geez, I'm so full. I was like, okay, well, don't, cut the pasta down. So they're still having their pasta. They're still having what they want to have, but they're self-selecting it out. And then slowly over the first few weeks, and they make some small tweaks. I try and do tweaks for every meal. So it's like, oh, my oatmeal or whatever. So, well, let's try eggs, and then of course you sometimes get the cholesterol thing, and you got to bust that myth down, but try and make little tweaks all the way along. There's like, those, pardon my French here, but so many people use those creamer shitstorm chemical concoctions in their coffee. And I was like, you know what? Let's just try some heavy cream and like stevia or something, let's move it slowly the dial to the point where maybe they never get there. Maybe eventually they're just drinking black, or they're drinking a bulletproof coffee, whatever. But let's get some of that inflammatory stuff out. Do some of that, change some snacks. Over time, I find my clients, they start to feel a little bit better. Excuse me. And they start to see results. They start to lose weight. They start to feel better. I always talk to them about their, bowel movements and that sort of thing, and how their sleep and brain fog and all that. And then they're like, hey, yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, we went on the weekend and I had pizza. I'm like, oh, I felt so bad. I was like, yeah, because your body's starting to feel how it feels when you eat things that are serving you, and then it's like, aha, it sort of clicks for them. It has to click for them, right? I can write, I actually, with my education, I'm actually not allowed to write meal plans for people. But let's, for the sake of argument, say I did that and wrote a 1-month meal plan, highly detailed, and the person's going to go buy all this stuff and make all this stuff, whatever. It's like, I'm not with them 24/7, right? They have to want to comply. They have to learn to comply themselves. And at some point, our time is done, right? After the X amount of time, they have to have learned these strategies, excuse me, to be able to handle it onwards. And they might rescind a bit, but they've made enough of a shift. They've changed enough things. They've taken enough stuff out of their diet, modified their behavior and their mindset enough that they're good going forward. So that's kind of how I approach the nutrition piece. But again, it's, as all of us know, right? We're all biohackers here. They got to handle the stress. They got to handle the sleep. They got to handle, blue light exposure, all air, all that type of stuff. I have a funny anecdote about environmental things. I'll save it for the end if somebody asks me later. But Bert, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. No, and it does all fit in. So, and it's and I'm sure that you'll get them better results. If you just focus on the fitness side of it, they'll get good results. But the thing is, once you start incorporating the food stuff, it only amplifies both together, so to say, right? So, and once they start seeing results, like you said, then they start self-selecting, and it's a snowball effect.
For sure. Sorry, we all done there?
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
So like I said, I think 80% nutrition, 10% exercise, and then the rest is sleep and stress and all that other and everything else. So again, back to my earliest comment when we started, movement is key for longevity, for being healthy, for flexibility, healthy aging, balance, etc. But again, it's a small piece. I could get someone really, and I was that guy back in the day. I was really, really strong in university when I used to train like a powerlifter. I was really, really strong. I could do very impressive weights, but I was still fat. I was still out of shape and everything. So my goal is not to get my clients, unless they're specifically hiring me just for that, which most clients don't normally do. They hire me for the whole package. I can get someone stronger and build their lean muscle mass, but if they don't change the nutrition piece, they're just going to have still a ton of fat over top these muscles that they're building. I know exactly what that looks like because that was me. So that's try not to do. And again, part of it too, and maybe I'll bring in cardio or like that sort of training as well. I know we're kind of talking functional fitness. Maybe I'll expand a bit here, but again, for my personally, and then also with clients, what I try and promote is I try and move a lot every day. 15, 20 minutes here, 20-minute walk at lunch, walk after dinner with the kids, go to the park, etc. A lot of little stuff. But as far as like hardcore session, since I've pretty much taken a back step, sort of retired, so to speak, from running, I just do a HIIT session once a week, 20 minutes. Kill myself, sweating, breathing heavy, and that's it. So again, all my clients or anyone's going to be coming from a different point of view. But if they do a high intensity, whatever that means for them at that point in time, once, maybe twice a week, that's enough. As long as they keep moving a lot during the day, Pomodoro breaks, et cetera, to whatever, take the long way around to the bathroom of their office or whatever it might be. So I guess I just wanted to round that out. So any other questions? Come on, Kareem.
Hey, I had a question for you.
Sure.
Do you recommend proprioceptive stretching? Are you familiar with that?
Proprioceptive stretching. I might know it from a different name. Can you?
Yeah. So you stretch and then you kind of flex in that stretch position. You hold and then you relax again. And kind of. There's like a whole mechanism where you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You know what? I had to be quite honest with you. I have heard it. I can't remember. Maybe it was on one of the podcasts or some Ben Greenfield or something like that. I have to be quite honest. I haven't looked a ton into it. I don't practice that myself. I don't teach that to clients, and I might be mistaken here, but I think that's that. If chime in, please, Kareem, if you know more. I think that's relatively new science or process. So that's certainly. I'll be quite honest. It's certainly not taught. When you become certified as a personal trainer or anything like that, definitely, for sure. So I'm aware of it, but I don't do it myself. And but maybe I should look more into that. So that's an interesting question.
Thank you. And also foam rolling. Do you do rolling? You recommend rolling?
Yeah. So I guess good question. So I missed a big part. I guess I kind of very briefly talked about stretching as far as what I call active recovery, but it goes more beyond that. So for me personally, again, it's foam rolling, tennis ball, lacrosse ball, whatever. I have one of those sort of double-headed rotate. The balls vibrate and rotate. One of those machines that sometimes chiropractors or massage or physiotherapists have in their office. I'll do my spine, and if my glutes are sore or hamstring, I'll do that. My kids love it when I do it on their glutes. They think it's so funny and tickles them, and they laugh and everything. But I'll do that. I'll foam roll, stretch, and then also part of for me too is sauna and cold shower. I consider that all part of my recovery protocol for me personally. And as far as clients, besides the stretching, I'm never going to say like, hey, go buy a foam roller if they don't have one, or hey, do you have a tennis? If they have a tennis ball, most people have some ball or something lying around, even if they don't play tennis or whatever. So I'll show them those things. I'll certainly talk to them about not necessarily from a recovery point of view, but I usually kind of promote it as sort of an added fat loss hack, the cold shower, and sort of all those other sort of hormesis effects. And if they have a sauna or something, or a hot tub or something, to do that contrast. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. So that's something I do myself for sure. It's part of my routine, not necessarily every day like my in-depth stretching routine. Usually on the weekends when I have a bit more time, or something's really bothering me. If I'm traveling by car, I'll take that massaging thing with me and plug it in wherever and massage my back or quads or whatever. But yeah, I certainly let my clients know that. But it's also how receptive are they? Some people they know they want to make the change. Again, nutrition is my biggest focus. So if I can get them to focus there, if the exercise piece, fitness piece sort of is not as high as the nutrition, I'm okay with that. And if they're just going to do some basic stretching and not go more in depth, I'm okay with that too. Just kind of depends how far they progress on the nutrition piece before we get into some of these other more advanced things, and the sleeps and all the other stuff sort of comes at the tail end of the program as opposed to the beginning.
And I know you're an enthusiast in the sauna. Do you wear your Aura ring in the sauna?
I go both ways. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I haven't really quantified if wearing it like during the day makes my reading of my body temp at night when I'm sleeping higher. I suspect it might, but I'm not sure. I've seen people online who like don't want, one, I guess maybe the ring, they don't want to like wreck it from the heat or moisture or whatever, so they don't wear it or something, to that effect. So I go either way. I'm lazy, so I usually don't take it off unless I have to charge it.
But you haven't wrecked it then. You've worn it in the sauna. Like
I've worn it many times, 140 degrees. It hasn't wrecked it or anything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you tried the moments feature where you take an activity?
Yeah. So after, I think it was 2 times ago or whenever, when you mentioned that. So I've done it a couple times. So I typically meditate in the morning in the sauna is probably 9 times out of 10. So I don't do the moments when I'm doing that, and I'll explain why in a second. Recently, while I've been away, been on vacation or out at the lake or whatever, I find some quiet time. I have done the moments there sitting up. So what I found is obviously, I think it's a cool feature. I like it. Obviously, sitting up, you're going to get a higher heart rate than if you're lying down. But I found that doing the moments, wearing the ring in the sauna, because the system is taxed, my heart rate is so high. I'm like, I don't know if that's really doing anything. Like mentally, as far as being in the moment and thinking and losing my train of thought, or my thoughts and wandering and bringing my mind back. And the whole point of meditating, I think I get the benefit, even though my heart may be a little bit higher. But as far as tracking on the moments, it just seems like it's too high. So I don't really see the point of it. So I just kind of stopped tracking the moments while I'm in the sauna.
Yeah, I was just curious about like your resting heart rate, right? When you're at 140 degrees at an hour or something like that, right? Like how high is that going to go when you hit the sauna, right? Like things like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now. It's been a couple times because I'm obviously sitting in my sauna, but it's gotten up to, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now. I think it's like high 70s, which is not super high. It's like you're killing yourself on cardio, but for just a sitting position, it's obviously heart rate is elevated, for sure. There've been times too when I've been really long in there, maybe dehydrated, maybe pushing my fast a long time. Like I'm pushing nearly 24-hour fast. I'm like, I'll jump in the sauna and then I'll eat, type of thing. Probably a little bit dehydrated, in there for a long time, so mineral depleted from sweating, where I found my heart's just like really pounding. And I didn't track at that time, but I just how it felt comparatively, I was probably well over 100, I'm guessing. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Great question. Thanks for bringing up the sort of active recovery. Any other questions?
Okay, yes. So Deepak, in this group, probably I'm the one who's more of a couch potato,
Okay.
much more active than I am. So few questions. Number one is insulin resistance is one of the big things that we deal with all the time.
Sure.
And building muscle would definitely help making someone insulin sensitive. So my question is there any way to figure out how much exercise someone would need to make their muscles insulin sensitive? Let us say someone who's my age, 54 years old, hasn't been exercising. Walking is probably the only thing I've done. So would 15 minutes hit once a week do for me, or do I need more intense exercise? Is there a way to find out, other than actually doing the exercise and figuring out every 2 to 3 months by labs and all that, is there any other way for you to know what would be kind of, I know one of the things is depends on how much I'm willing to do, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Let us say I said, okay, I'm willing to do whatever you recommend to me. How would you kind of, I'm willing to, invest maybe 15 to 20 minutes a day is fine with me, but I don't want to go to a gym. I want to be at home and do what.
Sure. So I guess there's a couple things there. So first of all, as far as some way to track your insulin sensitivity compared to how much exercise, or what's the sweet spot for exercise, to my knowledge, I don't know of a perfect way or a best way. Anyone else knows, please chime in. As best I can think of, with some trackers, whether it be Fitbit or your Aura, once you put in your data, and I mean it's best to the data you put in and best to their algorithm, and to the best that it's tracking that your watch is not loose or the ring's not loose or what have you. It can sort of give you an idea of what your basic metabolic rate is, and you certainly can get tested for that as well from your body composition. What's your basic metabolic rate? Then over time, and this is not to do with insulin, but over time, through doing exercise and building lean muscle mass, losing fat mass, and then retesting, you should see a change in your basic metabolic rate. Besides the fact of the quantitative of how much, how many push-ups you can do or how many sets you can do, etc. So to answer your base question, not to my knowledge, I can't think, I don't know the way. I think the best way is just quantify from the exercise itself, tracking. And that's certainly something that I have my clients do as well. Well, they follow the program and then, yeah, I did it or I didn't, or I did extra or what have you. But, number one for someone, Dr. Carr, to your point of, is it too much or too little or what have you, number one goal, right, is actually is safety, right? That somebody doesn't injure themselves. That's the number one goal for anyone, personal training or exercise background is that the client doesn't injure themselves. So that's number one. So it's always starts slow. Kind of alluded to my earlier point. Actually dial it back less than you think, because the client will actually try and do more, especially if they're like getting the endorphin rush and they're starting to feel good. They'll actually, I want to do it again. I don't want to wait a week. You only prescribed once a week. I want to do it twice a week, or excuse me, what have you. So it's always starts slow. So I think that, I always be cautious with someone, and again, assess someone where they're at. What do they like to do? What's their activity levels now? If someone is 100% couch potato and doesn't do more than walking around the house, then we're not going to start you on a 10K run tomorrow and doing this, that, and the other thing. We've got to start very slowly and adjust as we go along, right? We can adjust weekly, bi-weekly as needed as their soreness. So I don't know, does that answer your question? It's very individualized to the person.
It does, because I don't think there's any way to quantify it yet, because as far as I know, there are no biomarkers that we know yet. And the problem is muscle tissue is different in different ethnicities. So someone like me who's of Asian Indian ethnicity, our muscles are genetically a little different. So my suspicion is we probably need more resistance training to build the same amount of muscle versus someone whose ancestry is something different, who don't have as much problem of insulin resistance as Asian Indians do. And you'll notice probably, Deepak, I don't know whether you've noticed it, in India I notice a lot of middle-aged men where the gluteus maximus is not there. So it's like the pants seem to be falling off because they've lost all their muscle, but they don't look overweight because their total body weight is not much, but they are TOFI, the thin outside, fat inside. So that's a big problem for a lot of, particularly middle-aged men. Women have more of belly fat.
Sure.
Actually,
gathers are on the midsection more.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
thing.
were you saying something? Sorry.
yeah, I just had something come to mind, right? So with exercise, you're stimulating the GLUT4 receptors, right? And it'd be interesting to run an experiment, the folks who actually have continuous glucose monitor, to take a meal and have the meal, like the same conditions, and then see what the response is, but then do another test where you actually do a quick calisthenics or something to stimulate the glut receptors in your muscles, and then have that meal to see what the glucose response would be. Because in theory, the glucose should be going into your muscle, not your liver.
So again, I don't think we have the tests available like a routine test. This would be more in a research setting because we need to do a muscle biopsy, or it would have to be one of those really fancy stuff, which is a research tool. So it's not, I don't think the blood sugar is going to tell us the GLUT4 response in the muscle. So we're not going to do a muscle biopsy or any of these invasive things, but there are some non-invasive tests. I don't remember the names, but as far as I know, they are not available for routine testing. They're available only in research settings. Because what they have found is that people who are insulin resistant, even children, those who have problems of insulin resistance and overweight and obesity, they have the poor muscle response. So there's more fat inside the muscle cells. It's like intramyocellular fat deposits. Sorry, long terms. So it's not the marbling of like a nice steak. That's the fat outside the muscle cell. That's good. But there is this fat inside the muscle cell, which can be seen on, I forget what kind of a scanning. So that response is bad even in children, those who, when they grow up and they develop problems of obesity and insulin resistance and diabetes. So going back to your question, Kareem, on whether the blood sugar response will show, it might show the blood sugar response, I don't know, but whether the blood sugar response on a Dexcom or anything that you're wearing doesn't tell us whether it's the whole body insulin resistance, or it is the liver insulin resistance or the muscle insulin resistance. And in fact, if you remember sometime back, I was talking about the glucotypes, like you put in your data through this algorithm that Stanford has created, your Dexcom data into that. So I had asked Dr. Schneider, I had emailed him, whether we can differentiate between whole body insulin resistance, liver insulin resistance, or muscle insulin resistance, or is it at the level of the fat cell? His algorithm cannot differentiate between all these different ones. If we are looking at, a personalized, individualized approach to health, long-term health, I think over a period of time, we'll need to know. Obviously, someone who has less muscle will be, more muscle resistant than, and if they have fatty liver, then obviously there is, problem with the liver. But at the level of the fat cell and at the level of the muscle, these tests are not yet available like a routine lab test yet, as far as I know. Any of you know anything different?
I don't know anything different. I think I agree with both of you that it's not there yet, and for sure, without doing a muscle biopsy, you don't know for sure. But I think the theory, like Kareem said, I think the theory is that if you work hard enough to deplete muscle glycogen, that the first, carbohydrates ingested will go to replace muscle glycogen. So I think that's the theory. So I kind of agree with both of you in that. One other thing I wanted to add before we go maybe change topics is Dr. Carr, you said about sort of ethnicity and response. So, through my 23andMe, and maybe most of us have done it, right? It gives you whether you're a power response person or whatever the terminology they use, or like more of a long distance, whatever the terminology. Someone correct me if I want. But I actually found that I'm a power responder. So, theoretically, I should be doing, low rep, high weight type of exercises. And when I did my 23andMe, which was a number of years ago too, I was still it's kind of before I hurt or it was around the time I hurt my back and that sort of thing. So I was still running. I was like, oh, maybe I should go from even when I cut it back after I sort of healed a bit, I was still doing 5Ks. Maybe I should move to like 800 meters and do like masters 800 meters or something like that, just to maximize my genetic potential. But that never really went anywhere. But I just thought that was maybe something to point out too, that if people have done that testing, what type of muscle fibers, fast twitch or slow twitch muscle they tend to have. I mean, we obviously everybody has both, but what's our predominant? So.
Yeah, and again, the other challenge is a lot of the database to which they are comparing doesn't have a wide variety from different ethnicities. So
Sure.
I know for sure that Asian Indians is a very small percentage of that database, and it would probably be different in different people. So yes, while 23andMe data is very interesting and important, I am still not sure that we have all the baseline data in place yet, because many of these genes, they may have a small minor variation, but when they are added up, they might make a completely different picture versus, somebody else. So with drug response, it has been quite a lot of surprises in that. Then triglyceride levels, HDL levels, these have been quite a bit of data around there. But if you look at the worldwide population, China is like 1.3 billion, I think now, and India is 1.2 billion. The data represented in the database of, the genetic variations is not proportionate to that.
Sure, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and of course the best way is to try something and see what it's doing for you, rather than waiting for when the tests are going to come up.
No, for sure.
I'll add to with the insulin response. The one thing I do practice this, and I have for a few years now, from Tim Ferriss, his 4-Hour Body, and then from I don't know if it was Ben Greenfield or the Found My Fitness gal, and then somebody else. But the whole thing was, two things. One is right after you eat is and depends on what you eat. Like I usually have apple cider vinegar or cinnamon or whatever. I throw it in. I don't care what stuff tastes like, so I don't care. So that helps with the blood sugar. But then right after you eat is like doing Tim Ferriss does 50 squats, like air squats. So I just do that, or like some low level activity right after you eat. And then the other one that I know that and this is from the Found My Fitness gal. But just doing a walk after you eat is just go for a walk. And that was a huge, whatever they did the study on that. And then Tim Ferriss, Ben Greenfield, what I do and I practice now as well is if I have an afternoon workout, and I've already eaten at lunchtime, so then I will fast, or I will wait for 2 hours until I finish, if I finish working out at 3:30, then I won't eat till 5:30, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. So I don't eat immediately after I work out, and therefore then that helps where there's growth hormone and your insulin response and all that sort of jazz kind of thing. I don't have nothing to prove it. I'm just going off of what and I feel fine kind of thing, right? So but that's something I've done for.
It's true, but again, Bert, you are probably not even insulin resistant.
No, yeah. But not even no. Yeah, so, but I have my family has a deep history of diabetes, very deep. So I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm, how prone I am, but it's just something I've always watched. And my whole thing though is brain health, right? So and watching blood sugar, because I get in mood swings. So that's where I come from. So that's what I'm watching is stability in blood sugar, and that's what I'm hyper aware of. So
yeah. So when we talk to clients, one of the things I always recommend is many of them, they work in offices, and just after lunch they'll go back and plonk in front of the computer again. So that's one of the things I suggest, that if you can go for a walk or maybe a walking meeting, or if not any of that, at least a standing desk. So any of the different variations, so that as long as they're aware that they shouldn't go and sit just after a heavy meal and high carbohydrate meal, that does make a difference, definitely.
It's awesome, make a huge difference is you can kind of see me probably moving, but standing desk is one thing, and which is fine, which is awesome, but put a tennis ball under your foot and it's crazy how much just rolling on your foot, right? Wow. See how much it keeps me awake and motivated and it gives me energy. It's weird how something so small makes such a big difference.
Yeah. So I use
Bert,
low cost version of a standing desk. I'll show you. I don't know if you can see. It's something called a stand. Can you see it?
Yeah. Nice.
This is a folding thing, and I can carry it around if I want to.
It works.
It works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, unfortunately, this is shipping cost to Canada cost too much. So I'd asked myself.
So Bert, I was just looking at the Tim Ferriss. So his protocol was doing a little bit of exercise, like doing a little squatting or whatever, or just wall push-ups or whatever.
Yeah.
He said it doesn't take like a full routine. It's only 90 seconds before the meal.
Oh, before the meal. Okay.
And it stimulates the GLUT4 receptors, which is
okay,
what
perfect.
he was talking about.
Yeah.
And apparently, like when you do that, the glucose goes inside of the muscle because the GLUT receptors were going in. So it's getting increased sensitivity of the glucose inside of your muscle, so the glycogen gets flushed into that instead of your liver. Yeah. And I don't know or I guess primarily to your muscles first before going to the liver.
Yeah.
But he advocates doing that before doing in the holidays and stuff like that.
I do both. Like I just it's just like a part of my routine. So, but yeah, I just like it's just like standard. I don't even think about it now, kind of thing, right?
Well, so it's working for you. You're fit as a whistle.
Yeah.
my whole focus though is more on the brain health side of things, right? And as a byproduct, this is the crazy thing. As a byproduct, like that's when I've noticed the biggest gains or losses in my body, depending on how you want to put it, was focusing more on the brain stuff, eating right, and like cognitive performance, that sort of thing, and exercising and like HIIT and recovery. And as an end result, it was like, I'm like, I mean, between 8 and 10, maybe I'd say 10 at most % body fat, but it's just because I'm focusing on the brain health as opposed to the working out stuff kind of thing, right?
So brain fitness is, associated with everything else. So there is
crazy.
Yeah, it's not like what is good for the brain and something else is good for the heart and something else is good for your bones. It's all together.
Yeah, but I think like I look for leverage points, right? And to me, the brain is like, and then the microbiome, but the brain is like, if you get that sort of up and optimized, it has a disproportionate effect on the rest of your body, kind of thing, right? Because you can work out, but if you're still like have cravings and you feel like a bag of suck and you want like, chips or whatever it is, kind of thing, right? But yeah, it's interesting. So it took a while to figure that out, though.
In that, sleep actually makes a very big
difference.
Yeah. I have my personal experience with sleep, but at the same time, with a lot of patients, we've seen that once we fix sleep, it's much easier for the prefrontal cortex works much better when the sleep is dialed in well. So then they can make the harder, the more difficult decisions much more easily. Victoria, what would you like to add?
Oh, actually, just on that topic of sleep, Deepak, you mentioned the hot-cold contrast, and I was wondering, does that, have you noticed that improves your sleep?
I have been using a cooling pad on my mattress, and this is not the chili pad, which last time I think we were talking about it, which costs I think about $800 or $900. Karim would know. So I got a lower cost one. This was about $350, and I think it made a difference because one of the days I decided, okay, let me just switch it off and see whether it really makes a difference. And I did feel very hot and woke up in the middle of the night feeling hot. And my sleep duration has gone up a little compared to before. But again, I can't say I can predictively have good sleep every night. So one of the things that worked was the mattress cooling. And the other one is a hypnosis audio that I have been trying out. So these two things have worked so far for me. But of course, I mean, there's a lot of stress that I have not been dealing with very well. So that is, of course, primary. But yeah, the cooling pad has made quite a bit of a difference.
I've actually
talk more about it.
I've actually experimented with sauna at night, and I do see a difference because in even a hot shower, like the vasodilation, like the blood flow goes into your whatever, your arms and your whatever that and not your core, and then when you go to sleep, you'll have a drop of temperature naturally from that. So, I mean, I've quantified it. I would say about 10-15% improvements in sleep induction and some deeper delta waves and things like that sleeping as well. So
I'll definitely second that. It makes a huge difference. A hot shower before you go to bed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll build on that. So I typically have sauna session, as I mentioned earlier, in the morning, and then my cold shower like right after. So in the morning, so I typically shower in the morning. So a little bit of a different. I rarely shower at night, but I will say for sure having a cool room or etc. definitely helps with my sleep. Having a cooler room. If I'm too hot, I don't sleep well. So that's all I'll say about that. But one thing that just popped in my mind that I've been experimenting with just the last call it week and a half. As I alluded to, I'm just getting over this cold and drinking my chaga tea here. But I was getting up in the middle of the night, coughing and disrupting my wife and all that. So actually what I started doing for about the last week or so is taking a little bit of, I have a blend that's about 50% CBD, 50% THC, taking just a little bit of that, a very small dose, but with lion's mane before bed. And I found my deep sleep has gone up. I don't know, is it one or the other, or it's the combination of both?
That's awesome.
Am I just so tired from being sick that I'm just sleeping better? I don't know. But at least according to my ring, I'm getting just under 2 to like just over 2 hours a deep sleep, which for me is an improvement with this current protocol. So.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Oh.
Yeah, so Victoria, does that answer your question? Essentially, when you take a hot shower and then a cold shower, you reduce your core body temperature, and that helps you sleep better. That is the theory behind it. And of course, a room temperature of around 18 degrees centigrade is much better rather than, and of course, the dark room and all that. And you can see Karim and Liliana wearing their glasses.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, I can't see the color on yours.
Yeah, mine are not tinted. These are just they're regular blue light blocking glasses. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I don't wear my blue light blocking ones when later on in the day so much, unless I'm in front of the screen. So one more thing, we've actually run out of time. So I got myself an Asus BP watch. That's been a really frustrating experience. So I'm considering returning it. I'm not so sure the BP measurement is very accurate, but something else I found out, and I was at an event, so this guy said, and then I went back and checked the data. There are some papers coming out that most of these have a green light sensor to measure, whatever it is, pulse rate or blood pressure or something. Most of those have not been validated in people of color.
Oh, interesting.
I know. I didn't know that at all.
Hmm.
So I think I'll forward the paper that I found out. So they did in Sweden. They studied. I think they checked Fitbit and Apple Watch and Samsung and some other ones. So Apple has apparently increased the intensity or something of that light, and I don't understand the technical details as much. Fitbit has also made some changes, but I think Samsung didn't even respond to them probably. So that is where it is. So I'll talk about my Asus BP watch later on, and I want to compare it with the 24 hours blood pressure monitor, the regular one, and all that later on.
So the Oura Ring doesn't have that light.
No.
So you can have that problem.
Yeah. And again, I don't know the background behind most of the, how do they actually measure the pulse rate and the oxygen saturation or the blood pressure. Blood pressure measurement is still not 100% okay yet. So Omron's come out with a watch which is not very accurate, very clunky, not even launched in North America, I think.
I think it's the density of your, when the blood's pumping through and then comes back through, it's the density of that
the optical this thing, I think, as far, and I don't understand the physics so well, so okay.
Can I add one comment? I alluded to it earlier about a story I had. So I'll just tell you my story, my theory, and you all can stew on it till another call when we have time to get into it a bit more. But so I'll just be very, very brief here. So we're trying to move our youngest daughter to the spare bedroom in the basement to be with her older sister. We're trying to get this done as soon as possible. So my wife dragged me to look for mattresses on the weekend. So we go to IKEA and we're walking around, and everybody knows what IKEA is like. And I don't know, maybe 10 minutes in, I just got so angry. I don't know why. I was very short tempered. I was getting angry with my wife, and I'm like, what are we doing here and everything? And I was very out of care. I even noticed in myself, but I couldn't stop myself. And she was like, what is going on with you? Anyway, so we finally, we buy this mattress and we get out of there. And as soon as I get outside in the fresh air, I just felt like this release. And it didn't dawn on me at the time or until later, but I was like, you know what? I think it's all the artificial light in that. And then they have all the products that are, whether it's scented candles or whatever, but then you go down to the basement or the second bottom level where you get the boxes yourself, and it's all off-gassing, all the fumes and everything. I think it's totally, I'm so sensitive now, I think, with all the changes I made over time. I just going to a store like that, just like sensory, and it visibly made me angry. So that's my theory anyway. I'll let you guys all stew on that, and you can think about it.
Deepak, it is quite true, actually. So a lot of people have very high chemical sensitivities. So
I think I've gotten more sensitive as I've cleaned up my diet.
Yeah, it is
sort of thing,
possible.
yeah.
It is, and I'm sure that the reasons will show up in your genetics. Some of it we probably don't know yet, and that's a very interesting experience. A lot of people feel that, even in old homes, of course, it could also be mold and things like that. But this off-gassing of stuff, even new cars, some people are very sensitive. Paints, after a Renault, many people fall ill.
Yeah.
So you're right in thinking that.
Yeah, that's my theory anyway. That's at least I explained it to my wife why I was so upset.
No, it's true. It's right.
Blame the light and the chemicals.
Yeah.
The Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Everything.
I had a similar experience at my son's soccer game. Before I start wearing junk light removal stuff, even with my blue blockers, and the light was so intense that I was getting nauseated from just the light. It was just horrible inside of a indoor soccer arena, and I won't even go there. Like whenever we have a game, I'm like, honey, you go with the kids. I'm outside. I'm not going into that building. And I had the same kind of sensation. I was just getting ill, and this place, I think the cover that they have, this plastic and everything, I don't know, it felt like my body's going, yeah, you don't belong here, get out.
Okay, bye everybody, see you all next week. Wonderful. Thanks so much for spending your time with us. Bye.
Thank you. Night.
Bye.